their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Try this on for size. Bonus scoop time each Tuesday. Zolgad, executive producer Declan Goff, star of the show Darren Doogie Wolfson, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, and also Scoop podcast fame, and providing me scoops for my written content often on ScoreNorth.com. And Darren, let's not waste time. Vikings are going through the process of talking to GM candidates. They're going through the process, at least have started, of talking to a list of 7 coaching candidates. What can you tell us about this search and where things might be headed?
Well, certainly, Judd. Good morning, by the way. Andrew Miller, Vikings CEO, is heavily involved. Capitalize the word heavily. He has all sorts of influence. I'm not quite sure. Heck, I'm not quite sure if Andrew Miller was walking through the Mall of America right now, that I would recognize him. Which means I think most fans have no clue who he is. But just know the Vikings CEO is heavily, heavily involved. As we talk here, Judd, on Tuesday, today is Brown and Poles interview day. Wednesday, Dan Quinn. Thursday, Cook, Wolf, Gannon. Friday, Todd Bowles. By the way, Todd Bowles via Zoom. A lot of these are Zoom interviews. I've yet to hear of in-person interviews.
Yep.
Then on Saturday, to be determined, I'm waiting to hear back on days for more O'Connell Ryans. Let me give you one more nugget.
Mm-hmm.
I was told one of the people that interviewed on Monday, Browns executive, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, has a pre-existing relationship with Jamal Stevenson, one of the Vikings personnel guys who has his fingerprints on this hire. They have a pre-existing relationship. I don't know how to classify how close that relationship is, but I think if you got Jamal to admit of the, 8 GM candidates, who does he have the best current relationship with? It would be the Browns executive, Adolfo-Mensah.
All right, so let's go inside this room, Dukes, because you talked about the fact that Miller, who was an executive with the Blue Jays, he is Kevin Warren's replacement, but Warren came from a football background. Miller comes from more of a business, as you just said, / baseball background. And so if he is heavily involved, also in the room for these Zooms are Ziggy and Mark Wilf, correct? Ryan Munnins and Jamal Stevenson, who were Rick Spielman's right hand men who replaced George Payton, who took the job with the Broncos last year. Am I missing anyone who has influence as far as this first round of coaching or GM candidate search goes?
Well, certainly Rob Brzezinski.
Oh, Rob,
Vikings capologist.
Yep.
He's been around for a really long time. Teams over the years have tried to pluck him out of here. Him, his wife, his family loves it here. Like he literally is. I was talking to Joel Corey, who used to be an agent, used to represent Ed McDaniel, a number of players back in the day. He is a salary cap expert. He works for CBS Sports analyst. So I had him on the Scoop podcast over the weekend. He has dealt with Rob. He has dealt with a number of the league's salary cap people. Joel will tell you the best in the business is Rob Brzezinski. Others will tell you that Rob is the best in the business. So yes, Rob Brzezinski is also involved. In fact, if I had to make a pecking order, certainly Miller right at the top, but Brzezinski would slot in right thereafter.
Brzezinski, I'm fine with. Rob's really smart, and he's been around this team in football for 20 plus years. The Miller one concerns me. That's a business guy. That's and I'm sure he's got his lane, Dukes, but that worries me. I don't trust a business X's and O's guy with a baseball background to be guiding a search this delicate potentially. I'm going to tell you right now, because I didn't know. I knew that he was definitely involved. I didn't know that he was involved, as you just said. That raises some concern and red flags for me personally.
Well, I mean, the reason I say that is I was told one logical candidate for coach is not in the mix. And it is this person's belief, this person's camp's belief, that is the Miller influence. I will say I like that they're not using a search firm. I think that would be a waste of time. a waste of money. I do think Miller has an analytical background, so I would certainly keep an eye on, of the 8 GM candidates, those maybe with a little bit more of a slant toward analytics. That would be Mensah out of Cleveland. I think Brown of Philadelphia also has a lot of those traits. He interviews today. Those would certainly be 2 names I would keep a very close eye on. I know last week, can't recall if it was our Tuesday conversation or Thursday conversation. Might have been Tuesday. I went with a write that down on Brandon Brown. I'll just say this much. If the next GM is not Brandon Brown, my money would be on Mensah of the Browns.
Interesting. I've heard that the plan or the goal is to have this list of 8 GM candidates whittled down to 3 by the weekend, perhaps fly those 3 in. And it sounds like we could have a GM named as soon as mid next week. Does that jibe with what you've heard about the potential for at least the GM to be taken care of?
Yes, it does, Jeff. I'm not quite sure it'll be 3. Could potentially be 2, but 3 would not surprise me when they whittle it from 8 down to whatever it might be, 3 or 2. Yes, certain people flying into town for interviews. I guess I would not be shocked, Judd, if we're talking next Tuesday. I guess that would be what, January 25th, if we have news of the GM then. If not by Tuesday, I would think then by our Thursday conversation of next week, by Thursday, January 27th.
So a list of these 7 coaching candidates, and they started by talking to Hackett on Sunday, leaked out on Saturday. I believe you tweeted at the time as well, Doogs, though, that this might be a preliminary list, but there might be more to come. Do you think ultimately, especially once a GM is on board, that there might be some new names to surface? Because there are some surprising omissions right now.
I do expect more names to surface. I will say, Judd, guys like Brian Flores, Doug Peterson have some hammer, right? Now, Dan Quinn has some hammer too, right? He's very much in demand. I mean, George Payton is swinging back to do another in-person interview.
Bye, Dan. That's fine. See ya.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dan Quinn, he's going to get one of these jobs. Then you wonder if Mike Zimmer ends up as the next Cowboys defensive coordinator. But yeah, Dan Quinn is getting one of these jobs. I don't know if I would make Dan Quinn any sort of betting favorite here. I think it'll be one of these other jobs, not the Vikings job. But yes, I fully expect more names to surface. In particular, I think the 2 I mentioned. I think those 2 former head coaches are waiting. They would like to see who ends up as the GM here. Then things could ramp up on those 2. So I would not sleep on those 2 for sure. But yeah, is it possible another coordinator emerges, a Byron Leftwich, maybe an Eric Bieniemy? I checked on Bieniemy again this morning, Judd. Nothing. Somebody tweeted me that Dan Patrick, who certainly has a number of league contacts, said on his radio show today that he hears the Vikings are heavily interested in Bieniemy. If they are, it has not reached Eric. It just hasn't. And so I guess it's possible maybe his name eventually emerges, but it hasn't yet. Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator, put on a show over the weekend. So you wonder maybe if his name eventually emerges. But in particular, I would keep an eye on the 2 former head coaches, Flores and Peterson. And I do expect that list of 7 to grow by at least 1, if not a couple, if not maybe 3 or 4.
Do you think that grows, Dukes, after the GM is named or before?
Well, I think there's been some initial contact on at least one of those guys. I don't have it nailed down to the point of being able to tell you which of the 2, but I do have a sense that there's already been some contact made. Certainly due diligence, internally on both those guys, but that there has been some sort of external conversation on at least one of those 2. So that work has already begun. I think it would ramp up, though, once the GM is named.
Flores strikes me as an unlikely candidate here based on one thing, though. He's a defensive guy who I think is a my way or the highway type of guy, which is what Mike was. And this is one league, Doogie, where they always hire the opposite of the guy that they fired. So I have to believe that guys like Bowles and Flores are long shots because they have a lot of the probably same philosophical views on life that Mike did. And if the Wolves truly sat down with players, which they did, and listened to what they said, I'm not saying that the next coach has to hold players' hands, but I am saying I think that person has to set probably a more positive and different tempo than what Mike did, for sure.
Yes, but could they potentially hire a defensive-minded coach? I suppose it's possible. My money would still be on an offensive-minded coach, but like, Judd, I've heard a ton of good things about DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That you look at Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, that there are comparisons to make there. That Ryans is such a rising star that do you jump on that bandwagon now, before losing him in a year or two, or seeing in a year or two him having all sorts of success somewhere else? I mean, I think there's some Kellen Moore, comparisons there too in that regard that don't necessarily look at Sunday's result. I hate overreacting to one playoff game, then all of a sudden saying, okay, Kellen Moore, not a capable candidate because Dallas's offense had issues on Sunday. Kellen Moore is still a very popular candidate, and I think he's got a very legit chance at this job. But I still want to see who the GM is, because I still, unless I'm being lied to, Judd, the GM is going to have some sort of influence. I can't tell you definitively that the GM has final say on who the next head coach is, but the GM's opinion is going to be weighed heavily.
And can I tell you, I hate that. I think the GM, you just got a class in what happens when the GM and coach don't talk, right? When things fall apart, when you don't have, if the GM is indeed going to oversee the roster, now that's a question, but if the GM is going to have final authority of the 53, I think the GM needs to pick the coach, because if the Wilfs and the people who are in charge of the search get in the way and say, these are our four guys, right? These are our four guys and you can pick. And the person says, yeah, but hold on a second. I like XYZ. And they're like, no, these are the four guys. You're starting off on the wrong foot. You really are. So I would love to know what the process is here with that. And the second thing is, I would love to know, and this only applies, Dukes, to the coaching interviews, okay? Not the GM ones. I want to know what the Wilfs and the people in that room are asking. Because if they are doing more than trying to get a feel for the personality and what the coach is like if they're delving into your philosophy on offense, there is not enough knowledgeable people in that room who will have final say, because I'll defer to Stevenson, Munnins, Brzezinski. But if Miller or the Wilfs are going to say, oh, I like how you run an offense, you don't know enough. That concerns me. So I would love to know the details of what they're doing as far as this search goes, because it could be fine. It could be good. But it also could be, and the Wilfs have accidentally done this before, overstepping your area of expertise.
I would like to know those details. I'd also like to know the details of how they came up with this initial 7 coaches list. Now, I love the diligence that they're doing, right? That they're not rushing into any hire. Now, really, nobody is rushing into any sort of hire, but I like how they're casting this wide net. These interviews are going multiple hours over Zoom, that they'll then whittle down a list, bring candidates into town. They are doing their homework, but I am curious on those details. But explain to me how Jonathan Gannon is on this list.
I know.
He was nearly fired mid-season in Philadelphia, yet this is pure opinion. But Todd Downing is one of my guys. And I'm not saying Todd Downing should be the next Vikings coach, but Todd Downing calls the plays in Tennessee, all sorts of success in Tennessee, yet he can't be one of these 7.
I know.
Yet Kevin O'Connell, who doesn't call plays in Los Angeles, is on the list. Heck, Nathaniel Hackett doesn't call plays in Green Bay, right? But, his coaching acumen, the pedigree, who his dad is, and, you hear a lot of the Packers people talking about Nathaniel Hackett. His time clearly is coming. But I'm just saying, how did you come up with this list of 7? Gannon is the ultimate head scratcher. O'Connell to some extent. Those two in particular, then leaving out names like Leftwich,
right?
Like Downing, like some others.
Yeah, and to be very clear here, the GM search, I applaud. I think they're doing that right, and they have to do that, and I get that. So I'm not just saying that they're screwing the entire thing up. That would not be fair. What I am saying is the coaching one confuses me, and I'm with you. That list, unless there's a lot more names, and I would really like to know, what are you asking? Because if a lot of folks like us like to pretend I know X's and O's, right? You don't. I don't. That's fine. That's not that's not your fault. But that's where the coaching thing confuses me and concerns me, because we all like to say, Kellen Moore called that play, and it was a terrible play call, in my opinion. Nonetheless, I don't begin to get all of what he does, and the Wilfs don't. There are certain people who do, i.e., the GM. So that's where this could be going swimmingly great or off the rails. And I would love to know more. So I'm completely in your camp. And yeah, that list of 7, it's a fine list, but it better be a starting point list, not a.
Well, I'm telling you, I expect
3.
more. Let me add on the 7 that I had an agent for one of these GM candidates tell me, you need to do your homework, start digging, that many of the 7 have a connection to the list of 8. That there are some obvious connections, right?
Sure.
Like, Adolfo Mensa was in San Francisco. D'Amico Ryans was in San Francisco previously as the linebackers coach, right? Like, there are some very obvious ones that you can find by doing a 2-minute Google search.
Right.
But there are some ones that go deeper that aren't necessarily easy to unearth, but those relationships exist. That there was some strategy behind this list of 7, compared to the list of 8 external GM candidates.
Interesting stuff. Have you heard more speculation, reckless or not, about why a week ago Monday Rick Spielman went to work expecting to be part of firing the coach and then staying and obviously keeping a job, not the job that he had, but he was going to be promoted or get a new title. And that did not happen. Have you heard any more about what the hell transpired for the Wilfs to decide really at the 11th hour that they were going to fire both Spielman and Mike Zimmer?
I'd love to tell you I have that answer, Judd. Heck, I've gone back and forth via text with Rick. I offered him the platform. If he's ready to talk, I'm all ears. He's not quite to that point. But yeah, let me remind everybody, 1 week ago, or I guess it would have been 8 days ago, 1 week ago from yesterday, Monday, that on Black Monday, January 10th, that Rick Spielman showed up at 7:30 in the morning, fully expecting to hear that the Wilfs wanted to fire Mike Zimmer, but that he was going to be retained in some form or fashion. Mike Zimmer then came in at 8:15, summarily dismissed. He, got the heck out of there very, very quickly. Rick stayed around, addressed the team, said goodbyes to many, many people. Tears were shed. I don't know exactly, though, what changed. But when we volunteered that information, when Jeremy Fowler of ESPN volunteered some information going back a month or so, some others, Charles Robinson of Yahoo, I don't think all of us were being lied to.
No.
So something did change. I can't exactly, at least to this point, Judd, pinpoint exactly what. Maybe it could be as simple as logic, common sense, that Zimmer and Spielman always should have been tied at the hip. But I think there is probably more to it than that. I'll continue to work on that.
Yeah, because I don't think that Rick would have been allowed to start working on trying to find his successor the previous week if there was doubt. So it went from he's coming back to he's gone. More scoops. Where else should we go? Where else, or what teams would you like to talk about?
Well, we can certainly talk about the Wolves. I've been asked about Willie Cauley-Stein, a good big man that's currently a free agent. Dallas let him go the other day. I've been asked by Wolves fans, hey, what about the Wolves not signing him for the rest of the year because that would put them over the luxury tax? But hey, what about a 10-day deal? Bring him in for a look. Maybe it eventually happens, but there's not been any contact to date. I checked this morning. No Wolves interest to date in Willie Cauley-Stein. The trade dialogue certainly continues. The Wolves are looking for shooting help. They're looking for some interior help. They remain, nothing has changed. they remain the smallest roster in the league. So the trade deadline, February 10th. I keep being asked about Miles Turner.
Yes.
What will it take to get Miles Turner? Well, currently he's hurt. So I need to see him healthy before I would give up anything. Hoops Hype, one of their guys who's plugged in, says Indiana's looking for 2 young assets. Now, that could be Jaden McDaniels plus the 2022 first-round pick. It could be 2 first-round picks. That's Indiana's asking price. Do I think in the end Indiana gets that? Probably not. Turner signed for the rest of this year, then through next year. I think them asking for 2 young assets, that's a pretty big ask. Maybe you meet in the middle. Maybe it's the 2022 first-round pick plus, like a Naz Reid, somebody like that. If you're bringing in Turner, maybe you don't necessarily have this big need anymore for Naz Reid, who I do like, though, and I think he is a rotational guy on a good team. Another interesting Wolves angle, Judd. Remember, there is a big financial stake in this season for Karl Anthony Towns. And it certainly looks like at the halfway point, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid are locks to be the first team All-NBA center, second team All-NBA center. In some order. We can debate who's first team, who's second team. But that Jokic and Embiid will be the first and second team All-NBA centers. So who will be the third team All-NBA center? Will it be Karl Anthony Towns? Will it be Rudy Gobert of Utah again? Heck, Jared Allen of Cleveland is having a good year. You've got the big man in Chicago who's having a good year for a good team. But remember this, Karl Anthony Towns can sign an extension this summer. If he makes All-NBA, that's the difference between him, earning an extra, it's tens of millions of dollars. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Judd, but like him making All-NBA third team would be very, very beneficial to him financially. And so it'll be interesting. If the Wolves can get as high as the 6th seed, I can make a case Karl Anthony Towns is third team over Rudy Gobert. But if the Wolves end up, say, as the 8 or 9 seed, Utah firmly entrenched as the 3 seed. Like Utah, I watched a good amount of Utah, Los Angeles last night. The Lakers won that game, so that didn't do the Wolves any favors. The Wolves went from the 7 seed yesterday to the 9 seed. That's how bunched up these teams are. Lakers and Clippers won yesterday to jump the Wolves. So the Wolves go from the 7 seed to the 9 seed. Now, if the Wolves win tonight in New York, they are favored in the Garden against Tibbs and the Knicks. The Wolves would catapult back up to the 7 seed. So it'll be like this the rest of the season. But I think if the Wolves end up as the 9, Utah is the 3, and Rudy Gobert was excellent last night, I thought. Utah lost, but he is such a difference maker. He was on the health and safety protocols list. He missed a handful of games for Utah in the last couple of weeks. You can see how noticeable a difference he is. Utah is a completely different team with Rudy Gobert not in the lineup. So it'll be fascinating to see how voters vote. But just remember, at the halfway point of the season, there is a big financial stake in this season for Karl Anthony Towns.
So is that a bonus then, or just what he could get if he signs an extension, if he is in the top 3 as far as those teams go?
Yeah, it's, I had somebody
work?
send it to me. Here, let me read the text.
Okay.
Give me a second. I'll find it. I've sent so many texts. I got to scroll down a little bit here. So much going on.
It's because you're the scoop
I
guy,
don't
Ricky.
know the dollar difference. It's based on the cap number of the year the extension kicks in. But Cat's regular max is 30% of the cap. The super max, if he is all NBA, is 35%. Okay. That number can increase by 8% of the first year of the extension. Okay. So we're talking on a year-to-year basis. It's, a handful of millions of dollars over 5 years. So I don't know if the total is 30 million, 25 million, but it's a significant amount of coin that if Cat is all NBA, he can earn that much more money with the super max extension.
Interesting. And so Cat at this point, as far as we know, is happy, correct? There's no chatter now about Cat.
There's
possibly.
not. There's not. I mean, there are teams that continue to monitor this situation. They have monitored this situation for a long time. I took a lot of heat. I don't know if that was 2 summers ago, 18 months ago, when Kill the Messenger, but I said it from somebody very, very, very much in the know, saying it's a matter of when, not if, that Cat asks out. But has Cat asked out? Heck no. Has he even shown any like tiny signs of wanting out? Heck no. Cat is pretty darn happy right now. And I just don't know if you turn down that sort of money, that he can still make more money here than elsewhere. I know he's already earned a ton of money, but still, you have a finite amount of time to maximize your earning potential. I think he wants to maximize his earning potential. So the way it's trending, like I think Cat ends up signing an extension here. He can always ask out if he wants to in 2 years, 3 years after signing yet another extension. But the way it's trending, yeah, it's just a matter of whether it's a super max or not.
Clear out scoop bag, sir.
Well, Sean Sutherland is positive. He's COVID positive for the Gophers, so he cannot hop on that airplane today as the Gophers fly to Happy Valley, Gophers men's basketball at Penn State tomorrow night. So they'll be down yet another key player. They were down multiple key players on Sunday against Iowa. No Eric Curry, no Sean Sutherland. Eric Curry is trending in the right direction. Still day to day, a matter of how he feels when he wakes up, but this is not a long-term Eric Curry injury. There were a number of NBA teams at Sunday's Gophers-Hawkeyes game, namely for Keegan Murray of Iowa. I mean, he's a legit lottery pick. I'm not even quite sure he'll be there if the Wolves end up keeping their first-round pick. He is really, really good. And so the Nuggets were here, the Warriors were here, the Magic, the Rockets, the Cavaliers. The Wolves typically scout every Gophers game, so there were a number of NBA people here on Sunday, including Calvin Booth, Nuggets assistant general manager, who was beaten out by Gerson Rosas for the Pobo job here a few years ago. So Calvin Booth, it'll be when not if for Calvin Booth that he's the number one guy in a front office, number two right now in Denver, highly thought of across the league. So he was here. So, that tells you how big a deal Keegan Murray is. Let me see if I wrote down anything else, Judd. I jotted down some scratch notes. Blaze Andrews, Gopher football player, is yet to hear if he's getting a combine invite. He's hopeful, but has not heard as of yet. I did catch up with Quinn Carroll, new Gophers offensive lineman, Edina High School, on Monday. So he's finishing classes in South Bend. So he will not be here on campus until May. So he will miss spring practice. He is taking 18 credits this semester to wrap up his degree. He'll finish his degree at Notre Dame in like 3.5 years. That is super, super impressive. He mixed in some summer classes. Sure. So he will be a graduate of Notre Dame in May, then transition here. Then he will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. He has not been promised anything, but he's had a lot of, really good conversations with Brian Callahan, the Gophers offensive line coach, with PJ Fleck, the Gophers head coach, that, if he does what he's supposed to do, what they expect him to do, that he will be one of the 5 starting offensive linemen when the Gophers open their season early September at Huntington Bank Stadium against Jerry Kill and New Mexico State. Quinn can play tackle or guard, but you look at Sam Schluter, left tackle, he's gone. Daniel Faalele, right tackle, he's gone. The Gophers need 2 starting tackles. They did bring in a transfer from Michigan, a kid that has started games on the Michigan offensive line. Mm-hmm. He may pencil in as the right tackle, if not the right, maybe the other tackle, the left. Then Quinn can maybe slot in at that other tackle spot. Not quite sure Quinn will play guard for the Gophers. He's already connected with Tanner Morgan, John Michael Schmitz, some other Gophers teammates. So he's still in tune with what's going on. He's able to do meetings like this. He's constantly talking with his position coach, but he won't be on campus until May.
By the way, Judd and Doogie, add Raheem Morris to the Vikings coaching request list. He will also interview for the Vikings head coaching job. That's from Peter Schrager, just coming through NFL Network. So the DC for the Rams, Raheem Morris, has been requested by the Vikings to interview for the head coaching position.
Yeah, so, and I think there will be another name or two. Raheem Morris, his Rams defense, put on a show last night. So that goes back to, like, how did you come up with this list of 7 to begin with? But just remember, many of these 7 do have a connection to the AGM candidates.
Last thing, give me a percentage that you think that a percentage chance that they actually do end up going with a defensive guy.
25. I think if they go with a defensive guy, D'Amico Ryans would be the guy I'd keep an eye on more than anybody else. Over Morris, over Bowles, over any other defensive coach. Jonathan Gannon. I don't think Gannon's going to be the next Vikings coach.
You're not impressed by him at all.
So, yeah, 25%. No, I mean, Heck, I heard good things when he was here. I mean, he was part of, the team that won the Minneapolis Miracle. There are Jonathan Gannon fans at TCO Performance Center. I'm just saying, like, he was on the cusp of being fired in Philadelphia.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, it's not just here. Like, he's on the Broncos list. Like, Jonathan Gannon is getting multiple head coach interviews right now. What has he done? And admittedly, I'm biased. Todd Downing is a friend. If it's not here, it should be somewhere else. I just think Todd should be in the mix for some of these interviews. And his name hasn't popped up anywhere. Now, he's still young. He's 41, 42. He's my age. So I think his time is coming, like many guys' time
not that young
is
anymore,
coming.
Dude.
But this is just my opinion. But you look at Tennessee's success this year, him having to navigate a tough situation there, the Titans being the number 1 seed in the AFC, him being the play caller. Why isn't he on these lists? Yet Kevin O'Connell of the Rams, who doesn't call plays, is. I just think it's a fair question to ask.
Fair enough. All right, we'll talk to you for more scoopage with Mackey on Thursday, Dukes. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good, boys. See ya.
Bye.